Hey everybody, and welcome to Raising Vibrations. Today you're with Simon, and I've got a little bit of a video to share with all of you today, and just want to, as I always do, just give you my thoughts and opinions on something that I feel personally inside of myself, and maybe contribute a little bit to the way that we understand astrology. So today we're going to be looking at how to work with your transits. Okay. Recently in the work that recently in my work, I have been observing the way in which we are relating to the astrological transits as human beings, and how to kind of maybe orientate yourself and to these transits so that when you're interacting with them and you're watching them move through you, you're getting maybe a better understanding of what the soul's actually going through. And maybe in that sense, you can develop a stronger ego as a way of being of service to that more deeper soul experience that is taking place for us right now. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I have been inspired a lot by not only my own current transit that I'm going through right now with transits, but particularly with my Saturn, the transiting Saturn on top of my natal Neptune. Now, I know for many of you that have been born, pre-1972, or let me put it to this way, 1977, actually, you will all know exactly what that transit's like at this stage, because you've obviously had that happen to you right now, and some of you are actually going to begin to have finished with that, or are going to have that retrograde back over your Neptune and then fully finish that cycle. And I've noticed that with some of you with that transit, before it, there was this intense confusion. And then afterwards, there was this intense sense of, I'm at peace with myself. I'm clear. I'm just going to accept what is. So that's what's really been inspiring me to want to share what I want to talk about today as well. And maybe help us out a little bit in terms of how we actually work with these things. Okay. So for any of you that is not familiar with what a transit is, if you have a look on the screen right now, you can see that I've got a little astrology chart open for us. And on the inside of the wheel, we have the astrological transits for the natal chart of a person that was born with this chart. There they've got those symbols. And then on the outer side over here, that's where the symbols are today. So that's where the planets are today. And of course, transits are how planets themselves interact with the natal position. Okay. Now, for any of you that is not familiar with all this terminology, I highly recommend watching a video series I created just recently called An Introduction to Astrology. And in the link in the description and in the links, the comments below, there's an actual link to that. So go check that out as a way to familiarize yourself with the jargon. Okay, so as we said again, we've got transits. Those are where the planets are today, and the natal chart where the planets were when the person was born, when you were born, and how are they interrelating within each other. So before we get into some really, really fun stuff in terms of understanding this astrology and what it's talking about, let's first begin to get a perspective or a grounding around what are the transits doing? Like what is it? Okay. The way I see it is that if you have a look at the natal chart, your natal chart. Now the word natal again is the imprint of the planets and the energy that are conditioning the way you see the world. It's your fishbowl, okay? And in that kind of imprinting, which is static, it's going to stay there. It's like the front page, it's the landing page on your website, okay? It's like wherever anything impacts you, it's going to be filtrated through that natal chart of yours. So we have this base. And when we look at the base, we get then the static energy. And of course, we know that things are not static in terms of moment after moment after moment. So we have an imprint, and then in the next moment, there's another imprint. And then in the next moment, there's another imprint. Okay, so we know that in every moment there is an imprint, and in every following moment there's a new imprint, and they're interacting with each other. Okay, so we would consider that then to be the progression of past, present, and future. So when you're interacting with transits, you're looking at the relationship of a static imprint or a marking of time of birth and the evolutionary progression, the evolutionary cycle of how your consciousness has been shaped and transfigured and transformed as you have been experiencing your life as an ongoing procedure. Okay, right? So in other words, it's like, how have you been growing in relationship to these experiences? How has the cycle of life been unfolding for you? Now, when you interact with your astrological transits, for me, when I interact with them, and what I could suggest as an offering is how you look at them as like, okay, so this is what my soul has come to experience on its like deepest level. Here are the ways in which that shift is going to take place. This is how I'm evolving. Okay. So if we have a look at this chart right now in front of you, what you see is somebody that has got Uranus there, okay, Pluto, okay, right on top of each other, okay. So we can see here that this soul, from an evolutionary perspective, has come into this lifetime with the cycle, okay? And I'm really, really super sorry for if I'm losing everybody, but please watch these videos over and over and over and over and over again to get a better kind of like grip on what I'm really talking about here. But this soul comes into this lifetime with the imprinting of those two planets very close together. So the energies crystallized in that moment are saying that they're here to complete an evolutionary cycle in relationship to Uranus and Pluto. They're born during a time in which those energies are in a completion phase. Okay? So this completion phase means that at some point, as the soul progresses, as they grow up in their lives, that, okay, let me just stop there for a second. I lost my train of thought. As the soul, like, it grows up in life, that Uranus, because it moves faster than Pluto, is going to, of course, move over like this. So it will make a connection to Pluto, and then eventually it will begin to move faster and faster, or further away from that place. Okay. So what we're looking at here is the evolutionary development of how that soul, or how this soul, is going to experience the pre-conjunction, or you just say pre-conjunction, then the actual mutation of those two symbols, and then the new phase relationship that those two symbols have with each other. In other words, they come into this lifetime with the completion experience. They will continue to have that within their life the whole time. But as they kind of like grow, they'll begin to consume and be conditioned and grow up and experience energies in which there is a new direction, okay? A new direction. So in your consciousness, if this was your chart, you'd be interacting with a completion phase cycle experience while the energy is beginning to create a new relationship. So some people that will be around you will have a new phase relationship, and you'll be interacting with what that means. It's really, really deep, and I don't mean to make this complex in this sense, but the main thing here that I want everybody to focus on is just that these symbols here are ending, but as you grow, as this person grows up, they'll basically be absorbing energies that reflect this new phase relationship. Okay, they might have friends that are 5 years older, etc., or younger. So 5 years younger, and they'll have that new phase, and it's like the energies will be completely different, and it's like interfacing with that changes. So that was a really like deep and complex way to see that, right? But if you look at something more along the lines of like Venus, okay, there's Venus over there. There's Venus in their natal chart. There's Venus, it's not today. Yeah, the 24th of July. That's when this transit is made for. Don't ask me why, but that's the way it is. Can you see it there? So if I just use my little cursor to move, look how that... Okay, let's just change this thing here, and let's just move this back. Let's take it by days. There we go. There we go. That's a lot better. Okay, everyone following me? Okay, so let's move it all the way back. See how the moon keeps on going around the astrology chart? That's a really, really fascinating thing to understand. Okay, so here's this person. They've got Venus in Taurus at 21 degrees, and they're watching their Venus transit. Now their Venus transit has, let's just do it there. Venus is at 19 degrees. It's approaching their natal Venus. Now, when you're interacting with something like this, okay, what's happening is that around about like, I don't know, 8 months ago, Venus would have been in the exact same place that their natal Venus is right now, right? 8 months ago, Venus would have been around here. And as Venus crossed their natal Venus, okay, I hope everyone's following with me, as the transiting Venus crossed the natal Venus, what happened was there was a new evolutionary cycle that began, okay? So just like in this case, Venus is 19 degrees, their natal Venus is 21, they're about to complete a previous evolutionary cycle, and what happens is, you know, some event happens in their life where they kind of just like are fed up with something, they surrender the experience, and literally as Venus hits 21 degrees, there's like this new experience, this new spark, okay, whatever, like a new situation comes into their life. They possibly have a new person brings them a new philosophy that they're inquisitive about. And Venus then goes 22 degrees and begins to make this connection. But can you see how it's now interacting? It's moving along. There's the natal Venus, it's static, and there's the transiting Venus, and it keeps going around like this, right? Now, I want you to notice something. As that Venus is moving into new experiences, it's basically creating new experiences. Like I said, it's creating new experiences for this person, okay? And those new experiences will continue to evolve this Venus here. Do you see what's happening? It's like as this Venus gets conditioned by experiences, whatever it is that you have, let's say for instance, you've got a belief system, right? Just because Venus is in the 9th house here. And you really, really hold on to this belief system. And while Venus goes around the whole entire chart, you kind of have experiences that develops your awareness around what this belief system is about, etc. You know, you come to a point over here and you have a crystallization of it, you know, as an opposition, etc. And it comes around, and all of a sudden it reaches this point again where it was just a few moments ago. And in that moment, somebody comes into their life or they have an experience that challenges this belief system. And it kind of sends them into a deep internal state of like reflection, right? This is getting a little bit intense here, but for just this conversation's sake, okay, this intense reflection. And eventually at some point they have this aha moment, and that's when Venus makes a new conjunction and they begin a new evolutionary cycle exploring that. And that's how we evolve the conditioning of our planets, okay? Does that make sense? I hope that kind of gets in touch with everybody. Do you see the cycles of how we are consistently shaping ourselves as new experiences come into our life, right? So the next thing I wanted you to notice is watch the moon. Look at the moon, how it goes around this whole entire chart, okay? And it hits all of their planets. So look here, okay? There we go. The moon is going to make a contact with Saturn. The moon is going to make a contact with Chiron. Then it's going to make a contact with the sun and Mars over there. Then it's going to make a contact with Mercury and Jupiter, right? Then it's going to make a contact with Venus. And it goes around, hits the North Node and makes a conjunction with their transiting Venus, and it goes around again. How many times do you think that moon goes around this chart before that Venus even reaches this part here? Watch this, okay? All right, so far we're on 2 cycles, okay? Let's have a look. Does everybody see what's going on here? Right? There we go. 3 cycles, okay? 3 cycles. And the moon's going to hit there. So now we have almost a Venus opposition. Let's get it to a Venus opposition. Okay. Wow. Look at that. Still not yet. 8 degree Scorpio. That's 4 cycles that the moon has gone around Venus. There we go. Almost done. There we go. Venus opposition. 21 degrees Taurus, and their Venus is now at 21 degrees Scorpio. So this person is now experiencing what is called a Venus opposition, okay, through transit. And that moon has hit around this astrology chart 4 times before Venus has even reached that point yet. So can you imagine what's going on here? The moon is like a reflector. We know this. The moon is the reflection. And it's the planet that, or the sign, the symbol, whatever, that goes around the astrology chart the fastest. And what does it do? It reflects all the planets every single month, right? So what is happening here? The moon is basically making contact with the natal chart consistently while Venus is traveling around the chart. And what it's doing is it's kind of like creating experiences that awakens your natal chart, right? Does that make sense? So as the moon goes around, it hits Saturn and Venus is making a connection here, and that triggers an event, and that brings us awareness. And the longer we live, the more we get to understand, the deeper our awareness becomes of our natal chart through the moon. But the extra layer here is that when we have Venus transits or Jupiter transits, I mean, you can do this with all of the planets, of course, you can see how immensely complex this can become. As you're watching your transits, you're beginning to see the beauty in the symphony of life. You're beginning to see the natural rhythms that you go through, the natural experiences that shape the way that you're evolving yourself. Okay? So how do you work with these transits? Well, the way that you would do it, and this is my experience, is that, of course, you're paying attention to two things, okay, from my point of view at least. You're paying attention to the overall story that your soul has come to experience. Now, that is something that you would, go to an astrologer for to get their vision on your chart. You would basically learn to understand what the symbols mean in your astrology chart and get really intimate with the process so that you know, this is my Jupiter. This is what my Jupiter does. Get in touch with what the archetypes are about for you natally. And then from then onwards, you begin to track your transits. So let's say, for instance, like in this case, we focused on the Venus, okay? Now, your natal Venus will have a certain story to it, right? And that's why you would want to get intimately connected with your chart first. So that when you begin to watch your transits, you begin to watch when they make connections to certain planets and watch the experience that happens in your life as a way to see how that planet is evolving. What is your soul evolving in this lifetime? So like for me, for instance, I have Saturn transiting over my South Node. I have Saturn transiting over my Jupiter, my Uranus, and now it's on my Neptune. And those are big players in my chart. Those are really, really big influential planets and like markers in my chart. And while Saturn, which is the best planet in my opinion to really get a grip on what those planets are, when Saturn transits over a planet, because Saturn is reality in that sense, it's the boundaries, it gives you the reflection of what those are, you begin to see what that story is about. That's why for me and for many sort of astrologers that are legitimately understanding the natural cycles of human life versus just pop astrology in terms of personality types, we really only get to truly understand ourselves once we hit like 50. And even then, we're still getting in touch with the process of our like spiritual higher meaning existence, right? But up until then, we kind of just are watching how we're being shaped. We're watching how, for the first part of our lives, our karma is being crystallized. Then we're watching how we're deconditioning ourselves from that karma as a way to rebirth ourselves at a Uranus opposition, okay? And then at that point, we begin to kind of like explore in a more mature way who we are as we've spent quite a lot of time with ourselves in our life. And then eventually, once we hit our second Saturn return, which is around about 58, we begin to really, really see what our chart has been about, because we've had the moon go around our astrology chart 100 of times. We've had Saturn move around that astrology chart twice in that sense. So we get this really, really powerful sense of understanding what these inner symbols are about and our journey is about through the transits. So firstly, how do you work with your transits? You work with them in the sense of get intimately connected with your natal chart. Then you begin to watch the transits that you would specifically want to pay attention to. In my opinion, watching your Saturn transit is a very helpful thing, especially when it comes to understanding, where your chart is being affected by Saturn. Let's say, for instance, if Saturn's on your North Node, for me, if I saw that, I'd be like, okay, so what am I seeing here? What is my what limitations, what opportunities, what people are coming into my life that have a sense of authority in a way where the theme of that authority seems to be what my North Node's representing, and how can I be more aware of that process and like grow in that area? If I was having, say, for instance, like Mars transiting over my North Node. I would also take a similar role where I'd be like, I'd feel this need to act in this area. I'd feel where Mars is pushing me to move in directions, and I'd go, okay, this seems to look like this is what the North Node's trying to say for me. And it's about experimenting with what you're seeing as a way to understand what type of cycles you're going through and what those cycles are representing as an overall growth that your soul is actually going through. Now, I know that what I've shared with you today is incredibly intense in terms of information. I'm really sorry if it's kind of went over everybody's heads to a certain degree, but the point is, listen to the video over and over and over again. But I'm sure that by understanding the interaction, that the natal Mars has a fixed position and it's conditioned a certain way. This person has natal Mars in the 7th house Pisces. It's conjunct the sun. So of course there is a need to really get assertive around what types of relationship dynamics they would like to evolve through in this lifetime, right? They're looking to really evolve themselves through relationships. Relationships is a big area in which they're seeing life through. Now, as Mars, in this particular instance, is transiting their 2nd house of the astrological chart, and you can see here that that's moving through there in Libra, they're probably going to be dealing with like balance themes. You'll probably see that they will come into certain circumstances and situations that will be showing them, there's something about their inner sense of resources and how are they sharing those resources in relationship to relationships themselves. Now, when that Mars, say for instance, begins to move over into the 3rd house of the astrology chart. There we go. Now it's in the 3rd house. Can you see it there, guys? And it begins to make this here. They begin to probably focus a little bit more on the nature of their communication within relationship dynamics. How are they communicating? And as you kind of go around the wheel, let's change it from days to weeks. As this goes around, there's 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. Did Mars just literally go retrograde? Okay, there we go. So this is 4 weeks later, Mars moves into their 4th house. And you'll begin to notice that in this person's life, it will shift from communication to more about how do they feel emotionally, right? How is their sense of emotional security and nourishment being supported in relationship dynamics? And can you see now, we've gone from their sense of self-worth to their communication to now their emotional type. And then you'd probably find as soon as they go over into the 5th house, there in the 5th house of the astrology chart, can you see that Mars is transiting their 5th house and also their South Node? They would get this opportunity to say, okay, well, how do I feel creative in my relationship? How do I find myself being creative in relationships, as an example? And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the ways in which we're evolving the energy. And that's what it's about. It's like the natal chart in itself is static, but the evolutionary dynamic in which those things are being expressed are consistently evolving. And that's how we kind of age. That's what I would say then would be the aging process of the soul, or the growth process of the soul. Okay? So how to work with your transits. Let's summarize quickly here. What we're looking at is the interplay between planets that are where they are today versus where they are when they were born, how those planets are being evolved, and we're looking at the transits. And we're watching. That's the key word here. We're watching and observing what's happening in our lives during that period of time as a way to get better understanding of what is taking place on an overall level, on an overall soul level. Do you see it? We're looking at the soul and we're using the transits as a way to get in touch with what that's about as they like interface with our own soul's dynamics. Okay? All right, guys. Well, I really hope that kind of gave you something to think about in that sense, and I hope it was worth the time. If you really enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, of course, share it with your friends, and have a fantastic week. Take care. Bye-bye.